Now, nearly all doctors who work in public hospitals are deeply concerned about their proposed model of care. This model of care has failed repeatedly. Port Macquarie, La Trobe in Victoria, St Vincent's Robina, all of these had to be brought back by their governments. Fiona Stanley in Western Australia is reverting back to government control. Joondalup in Western Australia, owned by Ramsay, has been touted as a success, but is being financially propped up by Ramsay since the introduction of activity-based funding. Their self-interest should be obvious. This model of care is ethically flawed. Government funding for public patients will always be limited. The amount of money paid to private corporations will be fixed and is determined by the activity-based funding formula. So the bottom line is that you can't make a profit out of publicly funded patients and deliver quality of care. So how will Ramsay and other private corporations extract profit from limited hospital funds? And how will they recoup their capital investment during the period of the contract? The government claims service delivery by corporations will be better. How can a corporation extract profits, recoup their capital investments, and deliver better care for the same money? They can't. It's nonsense. So the main way Ramsay and other corporations will achieve their financial outcomes is to cut costs to vulnerable patients. These are the elderly, the dying, the disabled, and the mental health patients. Ramsay and others will have a conflict of interest with these patients. The cost of meeting duty of care to vulnerable patients conflicts with their motivation to make profit and recover capital investment. They will discharge vulnerable patients prematurely before they are fully recovered and before community supports are put in place. I work as a rehabilitation physician. My patients have strokes, brain injuries and amputations. They often need long stays in hospital to recover. I fear for my future patients who are slow to recover. In public hospitals, we allow them the time they need to recover, even though funding has dried up. We absorb the cost so we can get them back home. Otherwise, the community ends up paying much more to care for them in nursing homes. I also fear for patients with dementia in hospital. When they're sick, they can get very agitated. They can wander, they can fall, they can injure themselves. In public hospitals, nurses stay with agitated patients to keep them safe, but this costs money. In America, publicly funded patients who are confused don't have nurses to keep them safe. Instead, they are physically restrained in beds or chairs. This will become the standard of practice for patients who are confused. Do you want this for your elderly relatives and patients in your hospital? What about patients who require palliative care? Now, if they die quickly, the private operator will be well funded. But unfortunately, some patients take too long to die. In America, publicly funded patients who are too slow to die have two choices: go home to die or go to the nursing home to die. Is this how you want patients managed at your hospital? You know, many patients with mental illness become homeless. In public hospitals, we find supportive accommodation for them. This often takes time, but we do it, even though funding has dried up. Do you honestly think Ramsay and other corporations will keep homeless, mentally ill patients in hospital till they find them supportive accommodation? No. Apart from cutting costs on the treatment of vulnerable patients, how else will corporations make profit out of publicly funded patients? One way is to cut costs on patient safety. In public hospitals, we spend the money required to promote a culture of safety. The private operators of public hospitals will not have a culture of safety. They will have a culture of cost-cutting. When disasters happen in hospital, health ministers are accountable. But health ministers don't like being accountable for hospital mismanagement. They don't get re-elected. But if disasters happen when a private operator is managing your hospital, the government will avoid accountability by blaming the private operator. And who will Ramsay be accountable to? Not you, the voters. Ramsay is accountable only to their shareholders. Apart from caring for patients, public hospitals have another important role. That is to train junior doctors, nurses and other health professionals. Private hospitals don't do that now. Do you believe they will train future hospital staff with half the funding they now receive for private patients? And do you honestly think Ramsay and other corporations are going to spend potential profits on quality assurance in your hospital? Governments in the future will have increasing difficulty funding public hospital patients. This is a serious problem. However, the solution is not to offload this problem onto unaccountable private corporations who will manage their problem by slashing quality and safety of patient care. What about health insurance in this privatised public hospital? If you have it, you can be sure Ramsay will pressure you to use it. You can expect to pay all the gap fees. The Department of Health is highly secretive about privatising hospitals. Well, they give the disturbing reason that is commercial in confidence. But Bowral Hospital is a public hospital. It's your hospital. The government has no right to be secretive with this highly important information about their plans for your public hospital. Privatisation of public hospitals deserves vigorous public debate. It is profoundly more important than privatising poles and wires. But somehow the government has cunningly flown this under the radar. The vast majority of people in New South Wales are completely unaware that this is happening in some of their hospitals. When I say some, not all hospitals in New South Wales. Nepean Hospital has received massive funding for redevelopment. So why is Nepean treated differently to other hospitals that are required to engage a private corporation to develop and run them? The answer is simple. Nepean Hospital is in what will be a swinging seat, which is Penrith, and it's held by a minister, Stuart Ayres. Nepean Hospital is about $500 million, and they were not required at all to seek a private operator. All the other hospitals with funding greater than 100 million are required. The difference is Stuart Ayres. So not only is the New South Wales government being secretive, but they are being highly devious. And so far they're getting away with it.
It's called discrimination too.
It's called politics. We must make it clear to the New South Wales government that handing over public hospitals to private corporations is totally unacceptable.